and I'm the host of Beyond the Campus, their monthly television show that describes some of the exciting things that are happening at Ferris State University and in the community of Big Rapids. Today, I'm welcoming three guests, Connie Meinholdt, Griffin, and Anthony Baker, who are going to talk about the American Democracy Project and the Political Engagement Project. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, could each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got involved in the project?
Well, I'm a professor of psychology here at Ferris, and my department chair asked me when he was transitioning into retirement if I wanted to take over his position as coordinator of the American Democracy Project, and I just couldn't say no.
And Rick, how did you get involved?
I'm a political scientist, and our department chair, John Thorpe, from the very beginning, I was part of the steering committee of the American Democracy Project. So from the beginning, I was involved in it.
And Tony?
Again, teach sociology, and John Thorpe again brought me in, but I was really engaged in trying to get students connected to communities outside of the university. So being engaged in that way was kind of what brought John's interest to me. So.
Okay, don't you also have the Center for Student Engagement?
Well, there's a Community Studies Institute, which again uses the resources of teachers and students to do research in the community. And it's also been a place that, as the American Democracy Project was emerging, was involved with promoting service learning.
Okay. Now, when I introduced, I said American Democracy Project and Political Engagement Project. What are they and what are the differences?
Well, the Political Engagement Project is kind of I guess I would say, the child of the American Democracy Project. And about probably 6 or 7 years ago now, a group of people with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities and a handful of universities around the country, including President Eisler and where he was at the time, wanted to do something to get students more informed about democratic processes. Youth voting had been dropping since the 70s, when 18-year-olds could get the vote, and involvement in politics was declining, and people felt that this was a real concern. If we're going to promote a healthy democracy, people have to participate. So there was a core group of about 12 schools that formed kind of a pilot group to start redesigning student activities, university events, curriculum activities, to try to encourage or teach their topics in a way that involved more engagement in political, social issues that related to our government, to a function of our government. And this is now spread to, 220 some, maybe 230 some state colleges and universities across the country now. There are parallel programs at private schools. This is just for public schools that are doing the same thing. It was in 2005 when the Center for Teaching Excellence at Stanford University and the Carnegie Foundation wanted to specifically engage curriculum in classes, and that's where they came up with this idea of the Political Engagement Project, and talked to our Vice President of Academic Affairs to ask Ferris if we wanted to be a pilot program. And we were looking for coordinators for that project, which I think is when Rick and Tony were stepped up to take on that chore.
Yeah. Okay, so you coordinate the other projects.
Right, we campus school coordinators. There's 8 of the state colleges and universities who are participants in the Political Engagement Project. Ferris is one of the 8, and as Connie was saying, it's coordinated through the Carnegie Institute at Stanford University, and we meet on a regular basis. And this is our 2nd year. It's part of a 3-year project, and we're campus wide. We're in virtually every college on campus. We have classes that are there where we're engaging the students in the Political Engagement Project.
Well, how do you do that? Since you're one of the co-directors, Tony, how do you do it?
Well, I was really impressed. I think we all were. when we put out the call for political engagement, there had been other attempts to get people interested in civic engagement, service learning, volunteer community participation, and I think that there are lots of different people that responded to that. But in terms of the political engagement project, there was a pretty quick response from many faculty who really, I think, understood what Connie was saying about the lack of participation in the democratic process. And so we had professors, we have currently about 35 professors. We have over 1,200 students are currently in classes that are taught by professors who are incorporating some form of political engagement into their coursework. And although the social sciences is well represented there, it's what's more intriguing to us is that we also have Scott Cohen, who teaches music appreciation and musical history, so he's connecting politics to it. We've been involved with promoting and participating with the theater productions in 1984 and Dead Man Walking. And we have pharmacy and business and
Construction management.
Construction management.
How do the
It's just
construction management do it?
Yeah, let me,
Okay.
fundamentally, at the core, it's a course on contracts and developing contracts. And at the core of contracts is the Constitution. The Constitution is the law of the land. And so fundamentally, before the students really begin to learn the specifics, the nuts and bolts, you might say, of what being taught in the College of Technology in terms of making these contracts, they have to learn the Constitution, because it all goes back to the Constitution. They have to read the Constitution.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Ed Brayton does a great job,
Okay.
Professor Brayton. And they're required to read the Constitution, they engage with it, they discuss it, and they're required to really understand the full implications of what they're doing in creating contracts for the construction business and for the construction industry. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with zoning and land use issues. I think there's a ballot issue on the city of Big Rapids that has to do with zoning rules and regulations and what you can and can't do in terms of housing and that kinds of stuff. And again, if a contractor wants to come in and build an apartment complex or a shopping mall, they have to go to the city council, the county commission, they have to deal with the locally elected politicians, all the rules and regulations. And so he starts with, and there was even a Supreme Court case about development and contracting a couple years ago in Connecticut where private property was taken
Yes,
to
I
develop.
remember that.
So he's brought all of these issues into his construction management class to deal with, the constitutional issues of what I build, where I build, and who's permission and whose property and ground. And I thought that was an incredibly creative way of bringing democracy into a technology field that you would normally think one has nothing to do with the other.
Exactly. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you from my college, I have something happening in every department, I believe.
Think about that.
I think
Yeah.
criminal justice and education. And
yeah, recreation and
Okay.
television
Television
production.
production.
They were videotaping
Sure,
everything.
yeah.
But it's amazing that my recreation department, where we think of rock climbing and a few things like that, the ropes course, they're out going to Bioneers. They have students at conferences all over the place. I've got teacher ed, they're going to school board meetings all over the place, which I think is wonderful. And then, Tony, you're working with my CJ faculty.
Well, and that actually was a byproduct of the political engagement project, is that we were able to develop, and the idea is that we had similar interest in doing community-based research, and we had people in the community that were learning of us, and so we decided, we're going to connect social science department students with criminal justice students to do a research project on children who are aging out of foster care in the local area, and there hasn't really been much done on that in a rural community. So again, that happened because we were connected to it. The other thing with the video production in your college is we are sitting down together, so we might have and who are interested in getting students engaged. And so, like my community studies class, which is my PEP course, we just got back from Chicago, and there was a student in media production who went along to document the trip, where we're there looking at how community is built in a city the size of Chicago, and then he's, of course, involved with it, even though, again, that was just merely a byproduct of the relationships that we developed.
So he's making a documentary?
He's documenting the Chicago trip. I had a student earlier in the semester document a tour of Big Rapids, where we talked about similar kinds of issues of building community in Big Rapids. So.
Interesting. If I were a student at Ferris, no matter what my program, how would I know this is all happening around me?
That's a more difficult question.
Oh.
One of the things we've been trying to do with ADP is create sort of a subgroup that does more public relations publicity, and we have a couple people that have volunteered for that committee. For the last couple of years, we've had campus-wide speakers, certainly with the PEP project up and going now. We're talking about a speaker series. This year it's coming together fairly well, I think, and we've had really good turnout. And again, ADP publicizes. We had a Constitution Day speaker in February talk about media violence and video games and that kind of stuff, well attended. The PEP project brought in Diane Wilson to talk about just average citizen involvement in dealing with pollution in large corporations. So we've been publicizing those. As we get an established speaker series, hopefully we'll get the regular publicity that we do with, say, the arts and lecture series every year. So it'll be advertised, it'll be put in the papers, it will be something that's on the calendar and everybody knows about it. But sort of in these early stages of program development, it's as things get confirmed in schedules, then we sort of flurry out and do the publicity that we can with it.
I know your speakers have become more and more popular. As we were talking before the show, I couldn't even find a parking place because they were so good. Rick, you were going to tell us something?
Well, no, there's a number of things, but one of the things you're talking about is in terms of getting the word out. I think the word is starting to get out, not only across campus, but within the community and beyond the community.
Okay.
Even. I know when Diane Wilson was here, our speaker last week, we had a full day where she came and met with our faculty roundtable, went to Professor Heron's class in environmental sciences in the classroom, and that night did a presentation. She also had a book selling.
Book signing. I knew about that. Yeah.
Right. But while we were, my wife Diane Griffin and I, was a Vista volunteer here. We were showing around Big Rapids downtown, and we just showed her, the community. And we took her over to Artworks, and first we'd taken her into the Pioneer, and the newspaper who'd done an article on her and introduced her to the young man who had written the article. And then we were showing around town, and we were in Artworks, and Jack Backdorf, who's one of the owners there of the Pioneer, heard she was in town, was home, left home, came up and wanted to meet her, had to meet her. So,
oh my goodness! Yeah.
And then while she was here, there was also a group of Fulbrighters who were here who gave some presentations, and one of the people with the Fulbrighters was a professor of political science, Richard Scher, at the University of Florida. And Richard was our speaker last year, one of our featured speakers in terms of the outcome of the elections, etc. Very renowned political scientist. I'm a political scientist. Richard says that the things we're doing with the American Democracy Project and the Political Engagement Project is innovative within the discipline even of political science. And we're in the process now of trying to put some things together to really go out at conference meetings and show some of the big schools, how to do it. So we're making some inroads even in the community and beyond.
And that's what I was going to ask too, how the other universities can learn from you, or you learn from them. I don't know, Tony, you're...
Well, I don't know. I was also thinking about an answer to that question is that students know they're in the political engagement project because at the beginning of the semester they'll get a really long survey.
Okay.
that they'll complain about, and it'll be in their syllabus. But I think that the overall goal of all of these projects, and we have been, part of the benefit is that we get to go to conferences and spend time with other people who are doing it, is that I'm not so sure that our goal is to make American Democracy Project real visible on campus. The goal is that when students begin, and people outside the community to begin to think about what Ferris is, they'll think about it as a place where students become connected to the communities in the society they live in. And I think that we got
how to apply their knowledge to a number of different ways.
Yeah.
And it's a challenging goal, but I think it's definitely a goal. And so I'm not sure if students know, I mean, the American Democracy Project sponsors the Constitution Week events, which is required by law, but hopefully what people remember are the experiences that happened that week.
Well, and we've talked about some other things. I know you've mentioned the Democracy Plaza, which they have done at some other campuses. Some schools have an Office of Civic Engagement, and we've talked about sort of a centralized, again, to make things a bit more visible and public, and, you know, again, with the Democracy Plaza, a way to connect students more actively into the decision-making and choices and that kind of stuff. But those are sort of future goals that we still need to figure out how to put in place.
I know you have voting drives, registration drives. You're trying to get the students involved in a lot of different things that way also.
And currently, next week, student government is preparing to have a campus-wide voter registration that will prepare, and ODK, to prepare people to vote in January if they want to vote on the ballot. But really, by a year from today, essentially, that we would have a situation where all students at Ferris have had very clear opportunities to register to vote.
Well, and we do have our ADP website. There's a Rock the Vote that we've joined up with. You can go onto the website and click on that and register online. It will send your registration to your specific county there you want to put. So you can go online and through the Ferris homepage, the American Democracy Project, and register online as well.
Oh, good. Have you seen results? I mean, you said you're taking surveys. Are you seeing some results from your surveys that you can share?
I mean, we're seeing the kinds of things that that we'd like to see. That I think that there's a concern that universities are doing political indoctrination. We're finding that that's not happening here, and it's may not be happening. Most research shows it's not happening many places. And we tend to find that students are feeling more okay about participating. I mean, it's generally, or their attitudes are showing. I mean, so we're showing general trends towards thinking about being engaged more. Connie's looked at this data a little more thoroughly, but
yeah, the sense of making connections, what I do in class and how it applies to the real world, or what happens in the real world and how that connects to what I'm learning in my class, which again is part of the whole idea of engagement, of putting education with the world. It's one thing to get training for a job, which is very important, but a university education should be, again, sort of in what Thomas Jefferson talked about, preparing people to participate in a democracy as an informed, educated citizen. And again, I think part of the books out of the Carnegie Foundation was just that, educating citizens.
Right.
So I guess the whole point of political engagement in American democracy is, to finish or make the education at a university more complete, not just train people for jobs, but to participate in the full range of adult life.
Before the show, we were talking about some issues, and I said there is some research in education that discusses how deep learning is, and if people are really to learn deeply and be critical thinkers, they have to go beyond the classroom. They have to have experiences beyond the walls of the school, and it seems to me that that's what's happening here. Do you notice, are they kids talking, asking questions?
I think so. I think we've been, when we have a situation that's across campus, so many students, or maybe you're taking 2 or 3 courses that are involved in the political engagement project. So they're being, I think the whole impetus is that the students are being shown that political engagement and involvement is important in a whole variety of settings. It's more than just voting. It's more than just turning on the TV and seeing the news. It's everyday life, in fact. And in order to, we talk a lot at Ferris about how we're creating we're creating opportunities for students to go out career-oriented, et cetera. Well, I know the large corporations that I've dealt with, and I've dealt with a few, and they want citizens who are involved. It's more than just, especially when you get to managerial positions and supervisory and leadership positions, they want their employees to be out in the community doing positive things, whether it be big brothers and big sisters, or or some environmental program. That's important to them. So I think we're showing that in the classroom.
Well, I think, like with the community studies program, almost any student will tell you that sitting in a classroom for 50 minutes or 75 minutes listening to an older professor drone on about what we love to talk about is like eating cardboard. It's just really, really dry and really horrible.
That might be your students.
Yeah, not Tony's.
But to get students out of that style of learning and active, it makes more personal relevance, and it is more exciting. And I'm just thinking about, I teach a social psychology course, and I ask my students to form groups and try to have an impact. And I'm really wanting them to analyze the process. And I don't care if they do or don't have an impact, but I want them to go through and see what it's like to try. And they talk to other friends, and I'm not saying that's credited in my class, but I know that we've had some really interesting RSOs, registered student organizations, that have been popping up in the last year or so since we've had the political engagement in the classes. We've got a recycling club that's now a registered organization, or getting that way, that's apparently wanting to look into recycling and doing some things here at Ferris that we haven't been doing. And I think that's just great. I want to join the club. So there's a lot of students that are making things more personally relevant to what they can do. As you can say, grade point is one thing, but again, when people look for a job and say, I've done this, I made a documentary of the political engagement project that went on the New York Times college page, that's huge.
That's huge.
And students do walk around with a sense of, wow, look at what I've done. So if we can do that in class, as opposed to lull them to sleep gradually with our lectures of, pearls of wisdom, it's a lot more exciting for the students. It's a lot more exciting for the faculty, I think.
Yeah, I think it enriches or rejuvenates you.
Yes.
Makes you more excited.
Yeah,
You have to work harder, that's for sure.
Sure, yeah.
Well, and the goal of the projects has also been to facilitate courses being able to do that. So in terms of, there are actually people who get to leave campus. We had Scott Heron, young man that he is, take his students to look at wild rice cultivation and how that could be used. And this is an environmental biology class. Or Denise Mitten in your program, Recreation Management, who looks at rock climbing. Rock climbing happens in public spaces, and public spaces have rules and regulations, and so people have to participate in that. And Jenny Hines, who has gone to Grand Rapids Public Schools and board meetings to understand, I think in lots of ways, to get past some of the barriers that exist that keep people from experiencing urban school districts. There's other examples too. I think that, so the getting beyond the classroom, I think there's two good examples. One is the cross-fertilization. Students see that their political science class, their social work class, and their English class is all doing political engagement. So this must be important for all of these things, not just the political science class. And also the ways that we've been able to facilitate leaving campus. A political science group that went to Lansing and observed, deliberation over, pretty big budget issues that are happening.
And social work students that do a lobbying day in Lansing where
Right.
they talk about
excellent.
issues
Yeah.
with foster care and child programs and social services. And I thought there was an education day that was like that as well, to talk about education
Yes,
policy.
there is a day, but the students, perhaps Jenny's students will go down the next
okay.
time there is. But I have an aside. My mother attended one of Scott Heron's lectures and with his students. And she didn't know he was from Ferris, and I know he didn't know she'd be in the audience. But she called. She was just impressed at what the students had done. They'd been studying water quality, and they were making a report to a community, a recreational community and tourist community about water quality, and it really had a lot of people listening.
That's great.
They really paid attention to it. So I think it's kind of neat to hear about it. Well, when I first heard about the project, I first went to some of the meetings. One of the books that was discussed was Bowling Alone, about how people are do things only by themselves. Are you seeing changes in that regard too? Are people opening up? And
I look at that as as what that book was about was that we're becoming more individualistic and less connected to our communities, and that was what the research shows. And we were talking before this about schools and how it's we're becoming consumers of community instead of producers of community. And I think that that this is at least getting persons to see that politics isn't just a marketing campaign between presidential candidates, and we're choosing between the Chevy and the Ford, and then we get to complain afterwards. That we have to be involved in producing actions. And I think that, I don't know if we can really measure that right now, but I think the students have the opportunities to see it. I think they're also seeing their professors engaged in those kinds of activities too, which they wouldn't have if we were just lecturing.
No, I said that's very true. Tony, for a number of years, has been taking students to Chicago, and I've been 3 or 4 times with him. It's a tremendous experience, and meet with neighborhood leaders and take them into the neighborhoods in terms of what's going on there and how people have made a difference. And so it's that's been a tremendous experience too.
You have plans now? This is what, your second year?
Second year of the political engagement project.
What are your plans for the future? Because you have another year with political engagement.
Another 1 more year, yeah.
And then how about American Democracy Project? Do you have another year with that, or?
Well, American Democracy Project is sort of an ongoing, I guess if it was a parent organization. And there are a number of initiatives, some of which we've adopted, some we haven't. One has been the Voter Rights Initiative or Voter Registration Initiative, and we did do last year on campus sort of a full-blown voter registration drive, starting with Constitution Week and going throughout the fall until, the deadline for voting in the midterm elections. And we did a voter education fair. We did a voter education concert out on the campus, and we'll probably do those things again in next fall, again up until the registration deadline in early October. So that gives us about 6 weeks. And I think, I think that we need to, if we get the Office of Student Engagement or Civic Engagement going, that needs to be an annual or at least a biannual thing, because so many people come to college, you're 18, you got to decide a major, you got to do this, you got to do that, and the last thing or one of the lower things on your list of priorities is, oh yeah, I got to register to vote. And I think it makes a perfect sense that the campus would have that out there, buy your books, register for course, and register to vote. So making that part of a regular process through ADP. We'll continue with the Constitution Day because that's now a legal requirement every fall. It makes sense to do something on President's Day to remember sort of lessons of Jefferson and Lincoln. So I hope the speaker series stays in place, or that continues. This year looks good. I hope that becomes a regular thing. So we'll see what happens, where the campus wants to go. It's a democratic decision.
Okay, it's the part of the project.
Yes, it's not my decision.
How about with the political engagement?
We have 1 more year of the planned participation as Carnegie did it, but I think that we're certainly lobbying for, I think Connie's calling this Office of Civic Engagement, some sort of permanent facility on campus or program that would facilitate these kinds of engagement issues. And certainly we've gotten lots of great feedback that that's something that is hoped for.
And you're thinking something?
No, I would agree with Tony. That's one of the things. A center, we really would love to have a permanent center where we could bring together civic engagement, service learning, volunteerism, the whole
and I know my
situation.
Faculty wants the same thing. They're very much in favor. I'm very much in favor. Would you believe our time is up? And what I have to do first is thank everybody for participating. So thank you, Connie.
Thank you.
And Rick
Appreciate
and
it.
Tony. I wish we had more time. And I think you're doing a wonderful job. And all the students that you've got involved in the faculty, I think, are wonderful too. And I'd like to invite people back in the future to talk next month about heating and energy audits. So thanks a lot for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. We got to do it all.